In a small, sun-baked village at the farthest edge of the kingdom of Leora lived a boy named Renn. His clothes were little more than stitched rags, his sandals worn so thin that stones pressed his feet with every step. The villagers called him Dust Feet, though not unkindly. They simply knew no child who walked as far or worked as hard as he did for so little in return. Renn's mother had passed when he was 5, and his father, once a strong builder, had been injured in a quarry accident, leaving Renn to shoulder burdens far too heavy for a child. Every morning before the roosters stirred, Renn walked the long road to the river to gather water that he hauled back in clay jars nearly half his size. During harvest season he labored in wheat fields for whatever handful of grain a farmer could spare. When winter came, he scavenged wood until his fingers turned purple from cold. Yet despite all this, Renn's heart remained gentle. He helped elderly villagers cross the rough roads, carried firewood for widows, and shared his meager meals with hungry children. In a world that seemed intent on ignoring him, Renn still insisted on seeing the world with kindness. The kingdom of Leora, though vast, was not known for caring for its poor. Kings before the current one had prioritized wealth, walls, and war horses. But the new king, King Alistair, had a reputation unlike any ruler before him. Stories whispered through marketplaces and alleys spoke of his unusual compassion. They said he disguised himself in plain clothes to walk among his people. They said he treated wounded animals with his own hands. They said he listened more than he spoke. Many doubted such tales, but Renn believed them. He liked to imagine that if a king cared even half as much as the stories claimed, the kingdom might someday transform into a fairer place. One blistering summer afternoon, as Renn made his way to the river, he came upon a man lying near the roadside. The man wore simple brown clothes and carried no belongings. His face was pale, lips cracked, and he struggled to push himself up. Renn hesitated only a moment before setting down his jars and kneeling. Are you hurt, sir? Renn asked. The man forced a weak smile. Just tired. I've walked farther than I should have. Renn opened his jar and lifted it toward him. Drink, please. The man drank gratefully, though it was clear he tried not to take too much. You're generous, he said. More generous than most who pass. Renn shrugged shyly. Water's meant to be shared. If I were thirsty, I'd hope someone would help me too. The man studied him with eyes sharp and thoughtful. What's your name, boy? Renn. Renn. The man repeated softly, as if committing it to memory. Renn insisted on walking with him to the next village, so the man could rest in the shade of a tavern awning. During the walk, the stranger asked many questions about the village, about work, about Renn's father. Renn answered honestly, though sparingly. He did not want pity. When they reached the tavern, the man thanked him with a polite bow, something no adult had ever done for Renn before. You've done more for me than you know, the man said. One day, I'll return the kindness. Renn smiled, uncertain. I didn't do it for anything. I know, the man replied. That is what makes it rare. And with that, he stepped inside the tavern and disappeared. Days passed, then weeks, and Renn nearly forgot the stranger until one cool autumn morning. Horns blasted through the village square. Dust stirred as riders in gleaming silver armor entered, carrying banners of gold and white. Villagers gasped. Children hid behind mothers. Renn stood frozen as a tall man dismounted from the lead horse. It was the stranger. But no, this was not the simple wanderer he'd helped weeks ago. This man now wore a deep blue cloak trimmed with silver thread and a crown that gleamed like the sun. King Alistair. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The king stepped forward, his gaze warm and unwavering as it locked onto Renn. Asterisk, there is a boy among you, King Alistair declared, who showed me kindness when I wore no crown and carried no guard. He treated me not as a wanderer, not as a beggar, but as a man in need. And for that, I have come. The crowd fell silent. Renn's heart thudded. The king extended his hand. Renn of the Dust Roads come. Asterisk, and in that single, breathless moment, the boy no one ever noticed became the boy the king himself sought. Renn stepped forward on trembling feet. His heart pounded like a drum against his ribs, each beat louder than the last. The villagers parted to make way for him, whispering in disbelief. Some looked shocked, others confused, a few even envious. To them, Renn had always been invisible, a boy who lugged water, hauled wood, and carried burdens no one else wanted. But today, he was the boy the king called by name. Asterisk, King Alistair lowered himself to one knee, bringing his eyes level with Renn's. The crowd gasped again. Kings did not kneel. They commanded armies, held courts, sat beside thrones carved from precious stone. Yet this king showed none of the distant arrogance the villagers expected. Asterisk, Renn, the king said softly, when I walked among my people in disguise, many turned away. You did not. You gave help freely, without expectation, without hesitation, without judgment. Asterisk, Renn swallowed hard. I only did what anyone should. Asterisk, the king smiled gently. If everyone did as you did, boy, the world would need no kings. Asterisk, Renn didn't know what to say. He lowered his gaze, embarrassed yet strangely hopeful. He wondered why the king had come. Was it to give thanks? To offer a reward? Surely it could not be more than a coin or two. Kings had great matters to attend to, asterisk, but king. Alistair's next word struck like lightning. Asterisk, I wish for you to come with me to the capital. Asterisk, the square erupted into murmurs. Renn felt dizzy. Asterisk, to the capital? He whispered. Asterisk, yes, the king replied. I want you to stay in the palace for a time. I want you to learn. I want you to be shown the opportunities that kindness earns. Asterisk, Renn stumbled back in shock. Him? In a palace? Wearing something other than rags? Sleeping in a bed that wasn't straw? The ideas felt impossible, almost dangerous to imagine. Asterisk, my father? Renn began. He cannot work. He needs me. Asterisk, King Alistair nodded. And he shall want for nothing. While you stay with me, your father will be cared for. I will see that he has food, medicine, and comfort. His voice lowered. You have carried enough burdens alone. Asterisk, tears burned behind Renn's eyes. No one had ever offered such kindness to him or his father. Not a single villager, not a single passerby, not even extended family. But the king, this man whom he had known only as a stranger by the roadside, was giving him more than help. He was giving him a chance at a life he had never dared dream. Asterisk, but why me? Renn asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Asterisk, because, the king said, character is worth more than gold. You showed me yours. Now I want the world to see it too. Asterisk, Renn looked out toward the villagers. Some nodded encouragement. Others scowled in jealousy. His father stood at the edge of the crowd, leaning heavily on a cane but wearing a proud, trembling smile. Renn's choice was clear. Asterisk, he bowed his head. I will go. Asterisk, the king rose, placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder, and guided him toward the royal carriage. The villagers erupted with cheers. Though a few turned away, their pride stung. Renn tried not to notice. For the first time in his life, the path before him did not seem narrow or bleak. Asterisk, as he climbed into the carriage, Renn stole one last glance at the dusty roads he'd always known. Roads he'd walked 1,000 times with aching feet and an empty stomach. Roads that had shaped him, tested him, humbled him. He wondered if he would ever walk them again, or if this moment was the beginning of an entirely new destiny. The journey to the capital took several days. Along the way, Renn saw things he had only heard about in stories: vast orchards, glittering lakes, and bustling markets filled with spices and music. King Alistair spoke to him often, never treating him like a servant or child, but rather like an equal whose thoughts mattered. Renn learned about the kingdom's struggles, its divided towns, its forgotten poor. The king listened intently as Renn described what life was like for those in the outer villages. You understand something many nobles never will, the king said. That makes your voice important. Renn didn't feel important, but the king's sincerity warmed him. When the carriage finally reached the capital, its towering gates rose like mountains of white stone. Renn gasped at the sight of the bustling streets. The fountains shaped like dragons and phoenixes, the grand palace glittering beneath the sun as if carved from stars, and yet, despite the overwhelming splendor, King Alistair leaned close to whisper, "This is just the beginning." Renn. For the first time in his life, the poor boy from the dust road stepped into a world far greater than anything he had ever imagined, and his story was only beginning to unfold. Renn's first days in the palace felt like stepping into a waking dream. Everything, the halls of polished marble, the towering windows that caught the sunrise like crystal, the gardens filled with flowers he'd never seen before, was overwhelming in its beauty. Servants bowed as he passed, calling him young Master Renn, which embarrassed him so much that he tried not to look anyone in the eye. He felt like an imposter in a place built for nobles, not for a poor boy who had spent his life hauling water and gathering firewood. But King Alistair made sure Renn never felt small. On the first morning, the king greeted him in the palace courtyard. "Today," he said, "your education begins. Not in reading or fighting, though you will learn those too. Today you learn something far more important." Renn blinked. "What's more important than that?" "We learn how to see," the king said. He led Renn to a long balcony overlooking the city. Below them, thousands of people bustled through the streets, merchants calling out prices, farmers pushing carts, children playing between alleys, nobles carried in carriages, and beggars resting in doorways. "Tell me what you notice," the king said. Renn observed quietly. "Some people look happy. Some look tired. Some look hungry." "Good," the king nodded. "Most nobles look down from here and see only their own wealth reflected back at them. They do not see the struggles beneath the noise. They forget that real rulers serve not rule over the people." Renn thought of his village, forgotten by everyone except those who lived there. "Why don't more kings go out and see their people the way you do?" "Because power is comfortable," the king said gently. "Comfort can blind even the best of us." Each day followed a similar pattern. Mornings spent learning in the palace library with Master Halden, who taught Renn to read with patience and warmth. Afternoons spent with Sir Brynden, captain of the guard, who taught him how to stand, how to hold balance, how to move with purpose, not just for battle, but for confidence. Evenings were reserved for walks with King Alistair through gardens, stables, and sometimes even the bustling streets outside the palace walls. Renn found that the king was most alive when speaking with ordinary people. He hugged children, listened to merchants, asked farmers about harvests, and even shared bread with beggars. His kindness was not a performance. It was part of him, woven into his very spirit. Renn admired him deeply. One evening, After a visit to a crowded district where laborers worked until nightfall, Renn asked, "Why don't you send more help to them? You're the king, you can give them food, money, anything." The king paused, looking troubled. "I try. I've passed new laws, built shelters, opened granaries. But even a king cannot fix a kingdom alone." Renn frowned. "Then who can?" "You," the king said, tapping the boy's chest. "People like you. People who have lived the struggle. People who still carry humility and empathy. When those with good hearts rise to positions of influence, change becomes lasting, not temporary." Renn had never considered that someone like him could influence anything. In the village, he'd had no voice at all, not even the power to choose when he rested or what he ate. "But I'm just a boy," Renn whispered. "So was I once," the king said softly. "And so was every ruler, good or bad." As days turned into weeks, Renn grew stronger, smarter, and more confident. He learned to write letters with graceful strokes, to speak clearly without trembling, to discuss ideas about fairness and justice. But the most important lessons were the ones King Alistair taught during their walks lessons on compassion, humility, and courage. However, not everyone in the palace was pleased with Renn's presence. Some nobles whispered behind their fans, calling him the dust rat turned pet. Others scoffed that a boy with no lineage could never become anything more than a charity project. Renn tried to ignore them, but the words stung deeper than he expected. One afternoon, after overhearing a group of nobles mocking him, Renn retreated to the stables to hide his tears. He thought he was alone until the king appeared at the doorway. "Renn," the king said softly, "why are you here instead of at your lesson?" Renn wiped his face quickly. "Nowhere. I just needed air." The king approached him gently. "They spoke cruelties, didn't they?" Renn didn't answer, but the silence was enough. "Do you know why they whisper?" the king asked. "Because they fear change. They fear that someone of humble birth could rise and challenge the world they cling to." Renn looked up. "But I don't want to challenge anyone. I just want to learn." "And you will," the king assured him. "But understand this. Your kindness threatens those who rule by arrogance. Your goodness shines in places their pride cannot tolerate." The king placed a hand on Renn's shoulder. "You belong here, Renn, not because of birth, not because of wealth, but because of who you are." Renn felt warmth flood through him, hope mixed with determination. That night, he wrote his first letter to his father, telling him all he had seen and learned. He ended the letter with a promise. "I will make you proud. And someday, I will help others the way the king helped me." He did not know then how soon that promise would be tested. Winter arrived early that year, sweeping across the kingdom with a cold fiercer than anyone expected. Snow piled along rooftops, winds howled through alleyways, and food became scarce in the poorest districts. Renn, now months into his stay at the palace, had grown stronger and wiser, but his heart remained the same, tender, aware, and deeply connected to the people outside the palace walls. One morning, as heavy snow clouds gathered above the capital, King Alistair summoned Renn to the council chamber. The room was filled with advisors, nobles, generals' faces Renn knew well, though not all friendly. Maps and reports cluttered the long table. "Renn," the king said, gesturing him forward, "I want you to listen. Today's decision affects every family in the city." A messenger stepped forward, bowing. "Your Majesty, the outer districts are freezing. Many have no wood, no blankets, and food stores are nearly empty. If this storm worsens, they will not survive." Asterisk, a murmur of concern rippled through the council, followed immediately by a louder wave of objections. Asterisk, we cannot open the granaries again. A noblewoman insisted. Asterisk, the treasury is already strained. Complained another. Helping the poor will only make them dependent, scoffed a third. Renn's fists clenched. He stepped forward before he even realized he was speaking. Asterisk, they're not dependent, he said firmly. They're desperate. Asterisk, the council turned to stare at him, some in shock, others in outrage. Asterisk, this is not your place, boy. A noble snapped. Asterisk, King Alistair raised a hand. Renn speaks with experience none of you possess. He will be heard. Asterisk, Renn swallowed, heart pounding. In my village, he said, winter meant hunger, cold. Sometimes people died not because they were weak, but because they were forgotten. He looked around the room. If we don't help the outer districts, we'll be letting them die. And a kingdom that lets its people die cannot call itself strong. Asterisk, some nobles muttered in annoyance. Others shifted uncomfortably. Asterisk, the king watched him with quiet pride. What do you propose, Renn? Asterisk, Renn took a shaky breath. Open the granaries. Share blankets from palace stores. And send teams to help build fires and shelters. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Now. Asterisk, the room erupted again, half in protest, half in reluctant agreement. But King Alistair raised his voice above them all. Asterisk, it will be done. Asterisk, Renn's eyes widened. Truly? Asterisk, truly, the king said. Your voice carries weight because it carries truth. Asterisk, that very afternoon, the palace sprang into action. Soldiers distributed food, healers traveled through snow-covered streets, and wagons filled with blankets rolled into freezing neighborhoods. Renn chose not to stay warm in the palace. He insisted on going with the king to deliver aid himself. Asterisk, the sight of the poor boy now dressed warmly, standing beside the king filled the people with awe. Renn carried sacks of flour, lifted heavy logs, wrapped shivering children in blankets. He worked until his arms ached and his fingers stung. Asterisk, at one point, a small girl approached him with wide, grateful eyes. Are you a prince? She asked. Asterisk, Renn laughed softly. No. Just someone who wants to help. Asterisk, the girl smiled. You're like the king. Asterisk, Renn froze for a moment, deeply touched. I hope I can be someday. Asterisk, when the storm reached its fiercest, the king and Renn sheltered in a small house where families huddled around a single fire. Renn watched King Alistair kneel beside an elderly woman, gently warming her hands between his own. Watching the king so close, so human, filled Renn with a sense of purpose deeper than anything he had felt before. Asterisk, that night. As the storm roared outside, King Alistair turned to Renn. Asterisk, you did well today. Asterisk, Renn shook his head. You're the one who saved them. Asterisk, no, the king said. You reminded me why I must. Asterisk, the king looked at him with a mixture of pride and softness. Renn, when I am gone one day, the kingdom will need people like you. People who remember kindness before power. Asterisk, Renn didn't know how to answer. So he simply nodded, heart full. Asterisk, by morning, the storm had passed and countless lives had been saved because a poor boy once offered water to a stranger on a dusty road. Asterisk, in the weeks that followed, the city spoke not only of King Alistair's compassion but of the boy with the gentle heart, who had become his closest companion. Renn's story spread far beyond the capital, inspiring villages and towns across the land. Many said the kingdom felt warmer, kinder, not because winter had ended, but because empathy had begun to grow again. Asterisk, and as for Renn, he carried one lesson above all. Asterisk, greatness is not measured by birth, wealth, or status, but by the quiet choices made when no one is watching. May we all learn to see with compassion, act with courage, and give with gentle hearts. Let kindness be the crown we wear, the light we carry, and the gift we share freely. Like. Follow and subscribe message YouTube style. If you enjoyed this story and its message of kindness and hope, please like, follow, and subscribe to our channel for more heart-touching tales. Your support helps us continue creating stories that inspire.